Hello, everyone, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. My name is Demi Gloom. My pronouns are she, her, and welcome to the Middle School GSA. As always, we are not actually middle schoolers. The title is just for fun, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host.
Baloney Ferris. Hello, everyone. My pronouns are they, them.
And a bit of a October surprise, if you will, for you guys. We have very special guest, Mr. Beat.
Hi, I am Matt Beat. Yeah, known on the internet as Mr. Beat, and I am he, him is my pronouns. Yep.
Incredible. Matt, the first thing I want to say to you is thank you for all the passing grades I've got in history classes since ninth grade. You're an absolute legend. Your videos are incredible.
That's awesome.
And I'll avoid fangirling, but I am a huge fan. Thank you so much for the work you do. It's incredible. And I also went canvassing for Progressive Victory the other day.
Oh, great.
In Madison, and I heard that you cheered on the people in the Milwaukee event before, and that's also sincerely appreciated. So yeah, and also thank you for coming on this podcast. I have a really fun topic that Felonious Ferris doesn't think is really fun.
Well, that's because you hadn't really elaborated on it. Now that you elaborated, I'm more interested.
Okay, fair. So tonight's topic is, in a few words or less, I'll say, what on earth is wokeness as we approach this election, as we approach election day? A lot of people are talking about wokeness, wokeness in schools, how wokeness is destroying society. But I feel like very few people actually can define what wokeness is beyond it being a catch-all term for liberal policy. And I want to dive a little bit into the history of wokeness and its current presence in schools and just what wokeness is and its place in society as we know it. And if anyone else has anything they want to say right away, please do so. Like, what is wokeness? What do we think wokeness is?
First, I'd just like to throw out there that we are 1 week away from Election Day at the time of recording, which is Tuesday, October 29th. So if you haven't made a plan to vote, please do. Vote early in person or vote on November 5th. If you're in Wisconsin, you can still request an absentee ballot. Yeah, get out there. Do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would say my definition of what woke is, I think most people, when they say that word these days, they're talking about like somebody who is woke is somebody who's way too politically correct, as we used to call it back when I was a kid. When I was your age, yeah, we called it being politically correct, which means you have too much empathy. You care too much about other people. How dare you? So, but for many years, woke actually was more of a positive word, and I think to a lot of people it still is. I first heard it about 2014, 2015, somewhere around then, and somebody actually called me woke, and I was like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And they said, no, it's a good thing. You're actually like in tune to injustice, and you're aware of the systemic problems of society. But yeah, at some point during the Trump presidency, I think, into the Biden presidency, we just it seems like it's more of a pejorative these days, and it's like I said, it seems to be, oh, you're just being too overly sensitive.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Honestly, nowadays it almost seems more like a catch-all term for anything that isn't in agreement with Donald Trump specifically.
Yeah.
On anything to the left of far right, which is insane. We live in crazy times.
We do.
I remember the first time I heard woke, ironically, was my father, who I don't speak to anymore, to take a wild guess, I'm transgender, is a right-wing conspiracy theorist. And he would use the term woke. He would be like, stay woke, stay, the sort of like Cat Williams definition of woke is the opposite of asleep. And it being just a catch-all term. I keep saying catch-all term. I stole that from Felonious Ferris, just so you know. It's being a catch-all term.
I don't know that.
But like in tonight specifically, it being a catch-all term for being like in tune with some like secret knowledge. People like the David Icke and Alex Jones people would be like, stay woke, stay in tune. But like nowadays, it seems like those are exactly the type of people who complain about wokeness, which I find a little bit ironic, because the people who were saying stay woke like 10 years ago are now the people who are saying wokeness, or woke,
Wow.
as people call it now, is destroying schools
So crazy
and
because
education.
I never heard that before. To me, it was always about people on the left that were talking about systemic issues. So that's interesting.
I know it originated as a in African American vernacular English,
Uh-huh.
just being like woke. I think it was just in post slavery America. They would say stay woke, stay the opposite of asleep. Awoke, blech, aware. Aware of the injustices that are continued on the basis of race because of slavery in our past, and it's sort of evolved into a positive term also to just for injustice in general for all types of marginalized groups of people, and then slowly but surely evolved, or I guess devolved, into a catch-all term for woke equals liberal equals bad. And I guess me and Felonious Ferris went to a fairly, what people nowadays would describe, I wouldn't even say fairly, I would say an incredibly woke high school. And I was wondering if your school, the schools that you've taught at, Mr. Beat, would be described as woke, or if you've witnessed any wokeness in education.
No, they're just pretty much normal schools where people have a diversity of opinions, people of all political opinions, backgrounds, cultures, religions. Like I started out teaching in an inner city school as a substitute teacher, like a long-term sub in Kansas City, Missouri. And then I went from there to a very wealthy suburb district. And then from there, I went to a more somewhat rural, although a little bit suburban as well, district, all in the Kansas City metro area. Although I student taught in Omaha, Nebraska, which was an urban district. But yeah, all of these districts were kind of broke all the stereotypes because when you really get to know kids, you'll realize like, oh, they're all over the place, just like all of society. Like I said, that term woke, when I was in the classroom up until 2021 is when I left, I never heard it really brought up even. This is a relatively new thing, and it's mostly, I think, due to conservative media outlets just constantly bringing it up, and that's why my comment section now, every other comment criticizing me, they call me woke.
That's very unfortunate, because I find you to be one of the most objective, like, people who cover politics in general. I see you make a great effort to avoid inserting your bias.
Try.
That's part of the issue that we run into here, where objectively reporting the truth, be it about history or about what's happening in present day, the term woke has nothing to do with the truth. It has nothing to do with empiricism. It has to do with, are you far right or not? And do you accept all of the denialism? And honestly, I'm being harsh, but I believe delusion that you need to subject yourself to in order to be far right. So I don't know. I think maybe should we develop an operational definition of woke for the sake of this conversation?
I think so.
I mean, I know it's kind of been defined out of existence at this point, so that might be helpful, perhaps.
Actually, I was going to make a video about what does woke mean. I even interviewed some other YouTubers about it, and I just gave up on it because it was so frustrating because there's no universal definition. It depends on who you ask. It's one of those, I mean, that's kind of why I wanted to make the video. Like I made a video about what does the word fascism mean, or what does the word communism mean, or socialism, all these words that are weaponized. But this woke is different because I feel like even by the day, the definition changes. And so that's why what I ended up doing is I just did a live stream where I found one of those woke tests online.
I did watch that.
Okay, yeah, that's that's where I kind of realized, well, maybe they're just talking about political correctness, I think, based on how the questions were worded. But we don't have to go with that definition if you don't want to.
But it's hard. It's the nature of the word. It's a shapeshifter. It's defined by whatever the needs are of the person who's using it at this point. And it's constantly shifting. It's slippery. You can't really pin it down, and that's kind of part of its nature. I guess, the only thing I can really pin down about it is what I said earlier. It's just the whims of the leaders in the far right, whatever they say, or whatever they don't like. That's woke. Which is obviously extremely broad. That's a very large net. But that seems to be, I mean, I don't know how else I'd define it at this point.
If I had to put a pin in it, I would say in tune with the influence of systemic inequality.
This is the good definition
Which
of it that we like.
This is the definition that would be useful, but it's
Yes.
not the definition that makes sense if you're going off of what every Republican politician is using. You know how Republican politicians are using the word against us.
That's why I don't think we should even play that game, because they do the same thing. Like people that lean, it's not just far right, by the way. It's just anybody on the right end of the political spectrum. And because Elon Musk, every time he tweets something, he's mentioning, oh, this, woke that. So I just think it's weaponized so much that it might as well be communism is another word that I compare it to, because we know the definition of communism. I mean, it's in dictionaries. It's related to what Marx described and made so popular 150 years ago or whatever. And here we are. Kamala Harris is called the communist. Like, in many ways, she's more capitalist than Donald Trump is, but she's still called like they call her Commie Kamala. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess words just don't mean anything anymore. And so what I just started doing is, if somebody was playing that game, I would just send it right back at him. You're a communist. No, you're woke. You are woke. And then it becomes truly meaningless to them if enough people on the left use it as well. And then maybe we can just retire the word, because I think it's actually it should be retired. It has no longer has a use for education, in my view.
Yeah, defined out of existence.
Yep, we're seeing the same thing. I think the latest cycle we're witnessing is DEI.
Yep.
Same exact thing is happening with that. Everyone's being called a DEI hire, and now we're saying, oh well, by your definition, Donald Trump is a DEI hire, and then we're just going back and forth to the point where it ultimately means absolutely nothing besides a very vague concept. But for the sake of at the very least, not necessarily an argument, but for like the sake of a deconstruction, are we willing to stick with some kind of definition for this episode?
I think your definition about being in tune with systemic injustice.
Yeah.
In tune with the influence of systemic inequality is how I describe it personally.
That's the traditional definition of it before it got co-opted.
Now, I think everyone in this call agrees that systemic inequality does exist. Systemic racism and systemic prejudice against multiple groups of people does exist. And let's see here. I think one of the policies that is most complained about in wokeness are things like affirmative action, things like that, other policies that are designed to bring people up who have previously been held down. And in the words of yourself, Mr. Beat, you described affirmative action as favoring folks previously discriminated against. And you've said, as it turns out, they often need special treatment to even be given a fair chance at life. I was wondering, I know you have elaborated at this in your videos, but I was wondering if you could talk about it in a little more broad sense about affirmative action and how it addresses systemic inequality.
Sure, yeah. When I used to teach this to my students, I would use the metaphor of a race, a starting line, and some people are just automatically way behind the starting line. So we have to get them to the starting line so they have an equal opportunity. Because anytime you hear someone like Jordan Peterson say, oh, they want equal outcome, that's a straw man. Nobody's arguing for that. They're arguing for equal opportunity. But we all have different definitions of what equal opportunity is. So what is the starting line? So that's a whole nother debate. We can have a healthy debate there. But over the years, I changed my metaphor to the hole, whereas some people are in a hole and they can't climb their way out of it. It's not their fault that they're in that hole. Somebody pushed their parents into that hole probably a long time ago. Doesn't mean we blame the people that are up on the ground, but sometimes the people on the ground are just kicking dirt into that hole instead of putting their hand in there and helping them out of the hole. And I think if we think of it like that, affirmative action just means we're giving them a ladder, or we're giving them our hand to get them out of the hole so they can join the rest of us. And this doesn't mean that it's a zero-sum game. That doesn't mean like when somebody comes out of the hole, somebody else has to go into the hole, another hole. We're just getting all to the same level so we have equal opportunity. I think if you frame it that way, it's much more effective, because a lot of people that deny systemic racism exists, for example, they're like, well, why do they get special treatment? I don't get anything. And I'm not racist. I didn't have slaves. That was our ancestors a long time ago. And I think that the reason why they get so defensive is they're struggling themselves. Like I have relatives that are financially not doing that well, and I hear this from them, and they just think it's a zero-sum game. So we have to convince them, no, it's not a zero-sum game. We can all be winners here. If we lift each other up, we can all be winners. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
Rights aren't like pie. If someone has more rights, it doesn't mean that you get less rights.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get really confused about who, I'm not sure if this is the right word, but I guess who their enemy is. They get, we have people who are white and poor who are getting angry because there are services that are designed to help people who are people of color and poor. When really who they need to be getting angry at is who is setting the conditions that are making us all poor in the first place, rather than your neighbors who are also poor, who are subject to different conditions than you were. I think that there is a lack of perspective that a lot of people really desperately need.
Well, it's also just easier to blame the other with a capital O. So anybody who seems different, and obviously immigrants are always an easy target. But especially if they speak a different language, like, oh man, like you're different than me. So I think it's harder to like be all emotional, passionate about a system, like being, like because these are systemic problems. And it's easy just to scapegoat a group of people instead of the entire system itself. We could even just, if there was a group to scapegoat, it ought to be people that have power. But that's not fair either, because there are people in power that are trying to help, and they just are themselves. They're struggling to make progress with reform. So I think it's healthier to direct hate towards systems that oppress people. Although it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Given that the term is like so incoherent and that these injustices are so clear, like any fact-checking resource is willing to point out that all of these injustices that exist against groups of people, especially people of color, they are real. They're factually there. Why do we think the right has been so successful in pushing the idea that they're not real and that it's just woke, that it's and using this word to demonize anybody who even dares to question the influence of the past and the present?
There's a lot of moving gears with that question.
What do you mean?
I mean, there's a bunch of elements that go into it, right?
Right.
It's, something that I talk about a ton is, we have really poor literacy rates in the United States of America. I'm not going to be able to pull the exact numbers off the top of my head, but if you look at it, it's really astounding. The quality of education is declining, and as a result, people aren't able to read like they should be in the wealthiest country on earth. Like, come on. And I think that then that gatekeeps them from accessing information. I mean, if you look at journals like Breitbart, if you read it, it's very digestible. It is extremely easy to read. And then if you look at something even like the New York Times, it is suddenly the bar is much higher. It's harder to read. It's not something that people who read at a 5th grade level are going to be able to digest easily a lot of the time. And there are an enormous number of American adults who are reading at a 5th grade level or below. And so I think accessibility of information is something that's really, really big. But obviously there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah, I would add 2 things to that. To me, I don't think that's as big of a concern. I think, like, I guess I have anecdotes. That's all I have. But I have 2 daughters my 2 daughters are way smarter, could read way better than I did when I was their age. They're way more in tune with how the world works. But I do realize there are cultural problems, especially with young men. So that I think that's going to be a challenge in the coming years for sure. But the other 2 things I was going to bring up was what happened. I noticed between 2010 and 2020, the teens, was a rise of kind of a lot of people on the left end politically brought up identity politics and multiculturalism, and they brought it up, in good faith. They were trying to help oppress people, but the way they did it, I don't think was successful because it led to this backlash that I think a symptom of that backlash was actually Donald Trump. You just had, and that's also related to the whole term woke and DEI and critical race theory. All these things is because they just thought that for 10 years, if you were white, you were automatically labeled racist, and you have to declare that you're anti-racist and all this. They just viewed it as, well, wait, what did I do? I'm not racist. And so this was like them lashing out against being called racist when they felt like they weren't. And in some ways, I think most people are still racist, but I think how you communicate it is really important, and I don't think it was communicated very well. Multiculturalism has not been taught very well, even at the university level. I think it's still something that people just get this knee-jerk reaction to, like, wait, why are we even paying attention to skin color? Why are we even paying attention to different, like, all of our differences? We should be paying attention to what brings us together, not what rips us apart. So they're totally missing the whole point, which the point is just being aware of differences so that you're not making people feel like they don't belong to society. I don't know. It's not easy to make someone not feel like they're a victim sometimes. Sorry, I'm talking so much here, but my next one I'll be brief. Oh, no. The other one was, I think that you probably both would already are well aware of this, but we're living in the second Gilded Age right now. Wealth inequality has never been this bad. Even in the 1880s, it was not this bad. And so you have more and more people that are willing to sell their soul, give up what they truly believe in, just to make a quick buck. Our whole society is designed this way, where if you want to make money, it's much easier just to be a grifter. And so because of that, our entire economic system doesn't reward as much virtuous things that actually help people. Our whole economic system actually is quite, I would say, beneficial for con artists. I mean, it's much. If you're a young person, you might be a good person, sure, but you see like you're at a fork in the road. You can go the con artist route, which means you don't have to put in as much work. You just have to be good at talking. You make a lot more money. Or you can go the other way, which is the virtuous route, where you're going to have to work your butt off. You're going to have to go through a lot of crap, and you're going to have a lot of haters, and you're going to make less money. I say this, by the way, as somebody who was a classroom teacher for 12 years. So I think that's the path I took for many years. And more and more people are just taking the con artist path because it's easier. And I don't think this is brought up enough, that we have an economic system that, is setting people up for this. And to your point, Felonious Ferris, I hope I said your name right. To your
You
point,
can just call me Ferris.
Ferris, to your point, absolutely. They're not, like, media literacy, obviously, is something we all talk about. You're going to fall for con artists more too. So young people are falling more and more for con artists as well. So it's a golden age for con artists. I don't think people are bringing this up enough.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Also, I just wanted to look up and throw out the real numbers for United States literacy rates. 21% of adults in the United States are illiterate as of 2022, and 54% of adults have a literacy below 6th grade level. It's
What's that according to? Is that Gallup do something like this?
Ooh, let me look at the source.
It's crazy. Those are crazy stats. That is scary.
So this is Think Impact. So it's not one of the ones that you mentioned, but these are this is an organization that is frequently cited by major media sources. So I guess I'd tend towards trusting them, but again, I haven't done the work in vetting them. I'm doing this just now.
You've got better evidence than I do, so.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right in all of your points. I think, and I'd like to additionally add to that there's, if you are an American and you are forced to work 40 hours a week, as well, additionally as doing other things, keeping your house in order, taking care of children, things like that, the average person isn't going to have a ton of leftover time or energy to really dig into these things deeply. Mm-hmm. And I mean, these are emotionally exhausting topics to even talk about or think about at all. So I think that it's just like I said before, a combination of a whole lot of different factors. And I think that people, those right wing grifters that you mentioned, or grifters in general, they make easily digestible media. They make podcasts. They make YouTube videos. And
Don't call us out, Ferris.
hey, I'm the first one to say, take literally everything we say with a grain of salt. Double check everything that we say all the time. We're just people. I have no degree yet. I have no credentials. I'm just a person living in America. But yeah, so that content it's easily digestible, and it's what is easily available, and it's entertaining as well. And people aren't going to sit down and they aren't going to read how to be an anti-racist when they could sit down and watch YouTube for a few hours and feel really good about it. Unfortunately.
Well, and also I think someone in the situation you described, Ferris, who's white, also in, say, maybe 2014, 2015, isn't going to respond very well to an article that's like, hey, all white people are racist.
Oh,
Not
yes,
to say that,
absolutely.
Not to say that white people are victims of some sort of media campaign against them, but there are absolutely like provocative titles and things that did a really bad job of appealing to the everyman when trying to market this sort of academic language and market these I wouldn't say market, but introduce these ideas of systemic inequality, systemic racism to the average person. I think, like Mr. Beat said, was done very poorly. Mm-hmm. And done in a provocateur kind of way, in a way that was more distancing than uniting.
Absolutely. It led to a whole reactionary movement.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Oh God, what was I going to say? And this is something that I've said before on here, but I think it always bears repeating. But something that I truly believe is that humility is a core aspect of critical thinking. So having the humility to say, okay, maybe I was wrong, or maybe I need to integrate this new information into my existing worldview and change my behavior. And if people aren't taught to have that humility to be able to say those things and change their behavior, we have a real problem on our hands, especially when that kind of message is being delivered in a really accusatory, provocative way, like you said. It's just a perfect storm for people to feel attacked and to not be able to reckon with that.
I agree.
I also agree. I think the same thing can be said for queer politics as well. It's a little uncomfortable to talk about, but like out of nowhere. And I'm saying this as a trans woman who 100% believes that gender is a spectrum, and I'm fully on board with all the crazy woke gender ideology and putting litter boxes in schools.
Don't make that joke. People will take that sound clip out of context, and they will use it as proof.
But as myself being believing in a lot of left-wing gender theory, I can admit that it was probably very jarring for a lot of like straight cisgendered people to hear all of a sudden out of nowhere that not only is gender a spectrum, not only are there infinite possibilities for genders, but also they're wrong for not already knowing that, and immediately getting into the whole you're accusing everybody of being bigoted. And I think that we've actually learned our lesson pretty well as a LGBTQ plus community. I think we've done a lot better in more recent years, but I think that around the sort of like anti-SJW era of politics, we were doing a pretty poor job of introducing these ideas to the public. But I think now that everybody sort of has a trans friend nowadays, more and more people are handling these topics more maturely. But I think at first, when your first introduction, especially when your first introduction to trans people, such as myself, my first introduction to trans people was like trans women freaking out at GameStop and stuff like that. It was like I just felt very attacked. I just felt like people were banging on my door telling me, you have to believe this, you have to believe that. And it felt, I just feel like it wasn't executed very, very well.
And you're referencing the viral video, right?
Yes.
where what year did that come out? It was just a
I
viral
think it was
video of
2017.
a trans woman having a public breakdown. And that
Yes.
was a lot of people's first exposure to trans people. And also, let's be fucking honest. There still are a lot of trans people who are very hostile towards people who aren't queer and people who are cisgender in general. And I don't believe that it's the majority. I don't think it was ever the majority, but I think that it's enough that, you know, just a small handful of very loud individuals can give people a really, really bad impression about trans people, unfortunately.
And I've encountered a lot of, like, you know, I know a lot of trans people, and I do know trans people who don't necessarily hate cis people or hate straight people, but have a certain, if it could be described as prejudice or just negative leaning bias towards them. I believe, what was that university that created that like really weird test where you like have to just like quickly click on which thing you notice first, and like the result is,
Oh, Stanford.
Oh, yes.
was it Stanford?
I
Yeah,
believe it was Stanford, yeah.
Did you have to take that in school, Ferris? I won't
I
dox
didn't
your
have to take
school.
it. I did I took it in a psychology class. Yeah.
Well, I
I
won't.
was one of
I won't
like
make
3
anyone share
people in
their
my class
results.
that wasn't sexist. I'm so
Wow.
proud of myself.
I won't make you share your results. But I actually found out I was biased against heterosexual people,
No.
which was really interesting. It was a very slight bias.
I
But
think
I've noticed the
I just gotta say, everybody has prejudices. I think anybody who says they
Mhm.
don't is like, that's like saying I'm perfect. No, like
It has to do with the humility thing again. Sorry, didn't mean to
exactly, like,
interrupt you.
no, you're right. Like, that's what I was gonna say. Like, being aware of the prejudices and not acting on them. Like, 'cause obviously, I always brought up to my students, I'm biased towards males cutting my hair. I've always had better experiences with females. I've never had they them yet, but cut my hair. But yeah, that's my prejudice. And then I finally got over that, actually, in recent years, and I started seeing a male barber, and it's just like one of those things where I proactively like try to fight off my own prejudice. So we can do these things. Like, if you have a prejudice against I don't know, Brazilians, go to Brazil for a month and just hang out with them. You know, like, we can take action against our prejudices, but it's okay to like admit that we all have prejudices.
Hmm.
and any statistic will show you that diversity is basically the cure to prejudice.
Yeah.
Like, in any society, that's the more multicultural society is, the less like racist and xenophobic that country is. And I think it's also very important, also though, to recognize that prejudice doesn't equate to hatred necessarily. Prejudice is basically just another way of saying a bias. And it can completely depend on the context too. Like you said, you could be technically prejudiced in the sense that you don't like males cutting your hair specifically. I forgot where I was going with that. My apologies. It's a prejudice doesn't necessarily make you a horrible person, and I
Yeah.
think that's another failing that we made in I'll say the 2014-15 era, was we sort of came out with all these articles that were like, you are all prejudiced, you are all bad.
Yeah.
Here's how to fix yourself. And I think they were very well intentioned. I don't think that they were anti-white, anti-male, anti-heterosexual. I don't think that they were intended to be anything like that. Nor do I think this was a media attack on white people, like a lot of conservatives would say. But I absolutely do think it was poorly executed, and it came off as provocative. And while they did provide a lot of really good information and introduced a lot of academic language in everyday conversations, they also were very provocative and didn't really present it very well, like we've been saying for the last like 30 minutes.
A lot of people will just look at a headline, and if the headline is all white people are racist, that's what people are going to take away from that a lot of the time. They aren't going to dig that much farther into it. And I think that, I mean, it wasn't even like people saying you're all prejudiced. I heard a lot of more specific accusations, like I said, like all white people are racist. And when most people think of racism, they think something unforgivable and irredeemable, like someone in the KKK, something like that. And then people were like, "Whoa, I'm not a horrible, irredeemable person." And they were deeply offended by that perceived implication, even if it wasn't the intention. Yeah, it wasn't constructive in the way it was presented at the time, and I think that probably permanently turned away many people, which is extremely sad. But gotta salvage what's left.
I will say though, I would describe the tens overall as a pretty right wing dominated era of internet culture specifically. There was all the anti SJW gamer types that kind of, at least like the mid 2010s specifically, maybe not overall, but towards the end, I would say we absolutely, like right now, I would say we've absolutely, like, it is socially acceptable to be transgender on the internet. It is, and it is not socially acceptable to be like the anti SJW type. It's more so or the super anti woke thing. They have their numbers, don't get me wrong, but like they are not dominating culture right now, and I think a big part of that is because we learned a lot from our mistakes, and we've been presenting this information a lot well. It's been integrated in schools a lot better, and BuzzFeed isn't around anymore.
Also, yeah, like you said earlier, can I just call you Demi or Demi Gloom?
Yes, absolutely.
Demi. Okay, yeah, as you said earlier, Demi, a lot more people know somebody personally that's transgender or just queer or anything like that they had never encountered, even in small towns like that rural district that I taught in. That was even something. We had a straight gay alliance club there, and this was like a place where 10 years prior it would have been unheard of to have something like that there. And so I think just knowing people personally has helped a lot. I will say also that me being the president's guy, like it helps a lot when you have leaders who speak like most Americans speak, like most people speak. A great example of a president who did that, who made a lot of progress on with African American relations, civil rights, is Harry Truman. He actually was pretty racist himself for most of his life, but the older he got, like he first had African American friends. I mean, he's from Missouri. His mom was she waved Confederate battle flags, for fun. So that was his upbringing. But like he served in World War I. He had African American friends. He became more enlightened as an older guy. Changed his views. He was like, oh, I was actually pretty racist. I should be better. He's the guy who desegregated the military, and it was extremely controversial at the time. But he was asked by reporters, why did you do this? And he said in plain terms, I don't remember the exact quote, but he didn't use this elitist language or, he just sounded like a regular dude talking about it. And to many people, they're like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that. Same thing even with flash forward to Ronald Reagan. I know I keep bringing up civil rights with African Americans because it's just there's a lot of lessons from the civil rights movement, I think, in particular with African Americans, because it was such a long struggle. But flash forward to the 1980s, Ronald Reagan, the great communicator. This is one of the best communicators in American history. He was an actor. That's why. But he consistently praised Martin Luther King Jr. People forget that Martin Luther King Jr. at the time of his assassination was an extremely controversial figure. A lot of people hated Martin Luther King Jr. even into the 70s because of.
Didn't he have a 15% approval rate when he was assassanated? Something like that?
Something like that. And, by the 80s, and Ronald Reagan is a big reason why, there's this push to have a federal holiday for him. And his whole image was just turned upside down. All of a sudden, everybody loves him. And so stuff like that makes a big difference when you have certain leaders that are communicating effectively. Currently, we have Joe Biden as president, who is a horrible communicator. So that's one thing that I think people constantly compare him to Barack Obama, who was an amazing communicator. The crazy thing is, if you look at the policies of Joe Biden as president, they are further to the left than Barack Obama by far in many ways, in terms of fighting systemic injustice. And yet,
I do think that a lot of that can be attributed to the Democratic majority that we have in the legislature.
Yeah. He's a politician who reacts to the majority. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess my larger point is the most powerful people to ever rule the world were just good at talking.
Absolutely.
So I think everybody should put their efforts into how can I be a better communicator so that I have a broader audience? I'm not selling out, because remember, you're not the goal is equality and ending oppression around the world. So if you're trying to raise awareness of the victims of genocide in Gaza, even using that word genocide, you're going to trigger some people. So what you need to do is you just need to learn how to like talk to somebody who's not sympathetic or empathetic in a way that you're not automatically just going to trigger them. You have to avoid saying certain words if you want to, try to change their mind. It really is. We have to put all our efforts into this, especially since we're living in the information age.
Sorry.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's a really consistent feature of a lot of people who in present day are considered great leaders and historically are remembered as great leaders. All of the people that you listed, I mean, obviously Ronald Reagan is idolized as almost a deity for the Republican Party. And Martin Luther King and Barack Obama, obviously. All great speakers, all great at delivering information in a way that people are capable of digesting. I think you really hit the nail on the head with that.
And Donald Trump too, I would add to that list.
Yeah.
As
Well,
incoherent as he's become, I would say, I would still say he has a sort of charisma to him in a way of presenting information that is very appealing to his base and very easily understandable.
yes.
The only thing I think what's different with him is that it lacks nuance and it lacks consistency.
It's polarizing.
Because like you see him, it's very polarizing, and he goes back and forth. Like he went from saying he wanted to protect trans bathroom rights to saying that he doesn't support the idea of gender transition at any age. He also went from supporting a trans woman on his beauty pageant to refusing to call trans women women. He went from saying climate change was an utter hoax and saying that we could use some global warming because it was cold outside to then pretending to care about it and going like, well, obviously climate change is a serious issue, and giving his like very minimal compromises to those policies. I think with those things aside though, I do think he's a pretty good communicator in just getting whatever is on his mind across to his base and developing those diehard people. And the classic Trump endorsement sentence is, I would like to have a beer with that guy. And as silly as that sounds, I think that's a very, very important part of being a good leader, is just being the type of guy you would want to have a beer with or want to sit down and have a chat with.
Charisma is huge. It's enormous. And I think part of what's different about Donald Trump is that he's extremely appealing to a specific group of people and then repulsive to another group of people.
Yes.
And this kind of loops back around to what you were saying before, Mr. Beat, about grifting. He's a fantastic grifter. He will say and do whatever gets him the most votes at whatever point in time. Like Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump was a celebrity before he was a politician, and he understands public relations. He understands this. He knows the importance of it, and he knows how to sway people. So there's a lack of consistent convictions that he has, and he, ironically, like the word woke, is a shapeshifter. He will be whatever he needs to be to rile people up.
I mean, he was for universal health care at one point. Even as late as 2017, he was like, yeah, we Obamacare actually is good, but we can even do better. He just says what his fans want him to say. But when he realizes, he says it like when he was saying, oh, I'm the reason why we have vaccines so quickly. And he got all that backlash almost in real time. He was getting boos at his own rally. He stopped saying it because he's captive to his audience. He's audience capture 101. He doesn't care because, he just wants to be liked. And so he'll say whatever. That's the difference between him and I think most charismatic people. Most charismatic people are not con artists like he is. He's the world's most successful con artist in maybe history because he's been able to sell stuff that he's not done. He even sells beliefs that he doesn't have. He even markets himself now as the anti-war president when he was probably way more of a war president than even Biden. I mean, he expanded drone warfare. He did not bring troops home. In fact, more troops died when he was president than troops that died under Biden. And yet, if you ask Trump supporters, they're like, oh, we're not going to have World War III if we have another Trump term. We're going to have World War III with Harris. It's not rooted in reality at all. And it's because He's such a successful con artist. You got to give it to him.
And a really consistent pattern of behavior with a lot of right-wing politicians is in between elections, when there is a liberal in office, they'll talk about, oh, we need to stop all this spending on foreign wars. Oh, this is so terrible. But then if you look, once they get into office, oftentimes they're spending more than anyone else.
Yeah.
It's so yeah, they switch up.
They take credit for things that they didn't pass. They voted against, like the lowering prescription drug prices. Every Republican voted against that, and now they're taking credit for it. You look at campaign ads; they're taking credit for it. So we live in a post-truth society, which Trump has exploited, and many other politicians have as well. So I think back to what you were saying earlier, Ferris, about literacy. Specifically media literacy. I know a lot of people, I know that's kind of trendy to bring up media literacy right now, but I do think it is extremely important, especially with healing some of these divisions that we have.
Yeah. It's I talk about accessibility of information and literacy constantly because I genuinely believe that it is at the core of so many issues that
Absolutely.
we are facing.
Keep doing it.
Please, yes. To bring it back to the main topic before we wrap up the episode, I was going to go around the horn and ask, what do we think is the core lesson we could learn from the, I guess, epidemic of wokeness, anti-woke hysteria, just the whole presence of this woke, I guess, panic, this wokeness panic that we're facing right now, and how successful it's been. I know we've already kind of touched on it, but I guess to wrap it up, I was wondering, what do we think was the core lesson to be learned here? Because for me personally, I think it's, like we discussed, delivering information in an accessible way and making sure the information you present about things related to what I consider wokeness, those things to be, systemic inequality, to deliver those things to make it very accessible to the average person, make sure it's not accusatory, that sort of thing. What do you guys think?
I agree with everything you've said. I think I'll also add that there's a new moral panic every decade.
Yes.
It used to be rock and roll and Dungeons and Dragons, and right now it's the transgenders in the school. And historically, people we don't see that moral panic about rock and roll and Dungeons and Dragons anymore. It just kind of fizzled out, and it's happened again and again. And my hope is that this will also eventually fizzle out. I think that truth prevails in the end. It may take a very long time, but I do believe that truth will prevail in the end. But I think working on accessibility of information, be it about like literacy or trying not to be accusatory when you're talking about these problems, and trying to be as constructive and I guess even friendly as you can. Not God, words are not brain no word good.
Confrontational? Accusatory?
Hold on. I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. I'm so tired right now. But I guess reaching out to people in, don't beat people down. Do not use people as a way of taking out your frustration about you personally being oppressed. Reach out instead and try and bridge the gap.
Yeah, and I'll say this because we're probably going to get a lot of viewers who haven't listened to other episodes of the show. I'm a big proponent of radical friendliness. I think if there's one thing that we've advocated for on this show thus far, it is probably radical friendliness and reaching across the aisle. Would you agree, Ferris?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think that's definitely our number one virtue. And by that, I just want to say to anyone listening right now, it's not your job to educate people. I do agree with that sentiment. You do not hold a moral responsibility to educate the people around you, but I think you do have a moral responsibility to not drive those people further into the ditch that they're in, drive those people further. So I think to be a positive force, you should show people human respect, regardless of what their beliefs are, no matter how problematic you believe them to be. And, just, spend time with people whose company you enjoy, and not just people who agree with you on everything. And I think you'll learn a lot from each other. And that's my motto of life. There we go.
Yeah, I agree.
You want to have the last word, Mr. Beat?
Yeah, no, I mean, everything you all just said. But also, I mean, especially the moral panics thing. You just totally got that right when you're saying that it's just the flavor of the week or flavor of the year. Remember critical race theory? They don't even
Mm-hmm.
bring that up anymore. The folks that now bring up DEI. But I think at the root of so much hate and fear is really it's hate and fear that are, I think, the twins that we've been dealing with here for the last, well, in the Trump era for sure. Hate and fear. How do we get rid of hate and fear? Well, it starts with trying to tackle the problem of scarcity, because a lot of people are desperate right now, and not just materially, like they don't have enough money, but also they're not getting mental health treatment like there should be, and so they're self-medicating. So we solve that first. But other than that, yeah, meet people like you two were both saying. Meet people where they're at. We get out of our own silos and echo chambers and hang out where they are. Most people are good people. And finally, I just want to say that something that resonates with pretty much everyone is freedom. And so if you just frame everything around freedom, they're probably going to listen to you, because everybody loves freedom. And I noticed that's what Kamala Harris has finally figured out with her campaign. She says that F word all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom. The freedom F word, not the other F word. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay.
Mr. B, thank you so much for appearing on the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you for going on all these smaller podcasts that you've been doing. We all appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
It's really incredible.
I really enjoyed you when you were. Who was was it Charlie Kirk or one of those guys?
I debated Ben Shapiro and Michael Knowles.
Oh, those. Yeah, they're all the same to me. But yeah,
yeah.
But you met them where they are. Yeah, that's right. Thanks for doing that. That's how I first came across.
Yeah, thank you so much.
On the internet. So yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, just send your track to my email, please.
Okay,
and
I'll do that right now.
We'll get this out soon. And I'm gonna kick you out of the call so we can do.
Oh yes, have fun. All right.
I did just wanna. Okay. I wanted to say that I so feel you with not being able to tell the difference between them all. I also debated Michael Knowles, and I called him Matt at the end.
Oh my gosh!
And that was the soundbite that they took from our interaction, was me forgetting his name at the end. So I take that as a win, that I did a good job. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, they all make a lot of money, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
All right. Well, thanks again for having me. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Bye.
Well, how do you think that went?
I think it went well.
That was a reluctant. I know you tell me not to read into your speech patterns, but that was pretty reluctant.
I think that went well.
Do you think it went really well, a little well? Or just well?
I think that I wasn't top game today.
Well, that's what I think. That's what I think about myself too.
But I think you did a fantastic job.
I think you did a fantastic job.
I think I did a good enough job.
The whole time I was like, I'm embarrassing myself in front of my hero, Mr.
No, you're
B.
not.
Felonious Ferris is showing off. Try stomping on my grave the whole time.
No, you carried. You were the one who was like directing the conversation the whole time. I wouldn't have known what to do if you weren't here.
Let's just even it out. Instead of it being one of us did a great job and the other did a bad job, let's just say we both did a good job.
Yes, I agree.
We both did a good job. Are you ready, Felonious Ferris, for everybody's favorite part of the show, the comments?
Oh, yeah.
All right, and I don't have them pulled up. We want to thank everybody, though, for 364 subscribers.
Holy
what the
shit.
hell? We're famous.
What the fuck?
Mr. Beat should be thanking us for platforming him.
Oh yeah, we're just helping out small YouTubers
viewers.
Here. We love helping out small creators. That's what we're all about here.
Sawyer 186 says, I voted early, Demi. I early voted Demi W. Voted Demi for your information. Oh, voted Dem for your information. Hell yeah.
Slay!
We convinced Sawyer to vote Dem with our
Slay! Slay!
So incredible. Thank you for voting Democrat. Sawyer also says, "Can we bring back the farm animals background?" I'll see what I could do about it as the editor. We'll see if we can bring back farm animals. I have a feeling you won't be disappointed in the near future. Just for you, we'll bring back some farm animals. Jetbat said, "So glad the show is back. Thank you so much, Jetbat.
Thank you.
We appreciate it."
We love you, Jetbat.
Thane2575, who is Arcane in the Discord server,
Oh.
says the cognitive dissonance surrounding this election is kind of terrifying. Twisting yourself into knots to justify going against your intuition and supporting a candidate you hate just because she's not the orange man is unfathomable to me. Every American should be voting for Trump, regardless of if you disagree with his policies or his rhetoric, because he's the only democratically elected candidate on this list. Trump has won three primary elections to Kamala's zero. She is a political puppet installed by the corporate Democrat establishment. You were all told who would represent you. Why on God's earth would you accept that? She was just caught the other day reading off a teleprompter at a fucking town hall. I don't know who you think you're voting for, but it's not Kamala Harris.
Do you think that Trump doesn't use teleprompters?
Yeah. At this point, I genuinely believe that every Democrat willing to stand on their principles should either be voting for Trump or not voting. Can I say something before you steamroll this comment? First of all, Trump definitely is read off of a teleprompter. Second of all, you said, I can't believe you're voting for someone you don't even like, and then also said, even if you don't like him, you should vote for Trump, which is a little bit of a contradictory. And also, for the audience, I'm friends with this guy. This guy's a friend of the show. So we're going to be mean to the comment, but we're friends, so it's okay. We're not we're not trying to be mean to all Trump supporters. Do you consider Arcane a friend of the show? Because I do.
I don't consider. Oh God, don't make me answer this.
Okay, I consider Arcane a friend just because he's been very friendly and cordial. He called into two of my live streams. We've had a good time, despite our political differences. And I'm all about reaching across the aisle and spending time with people whose company I enjoy rather than based on what they believe in politically. And I've had a good time with Arcane.
I think you've had more opportunities to have positive interactions with Arcane than I have. But yeah.
Arcane likes us. He enjoys those conversations.
Okay.
He finds them productive.
That's
and
nice.
I find them productive as well.
Okay. Could you quick text me a screenshot of this comment?
Yes.
Just so I can go through it.
Yeah, there was a lot to go through and then start a conversation and then ask you to remember it all. So we'll send the parents yelling in the background. That's awesome. Not fighting, just having a fun conversation.
Oh wait, did you send it to me? Oh.
Yes, on Discord.
First of all, I'd really like to hear your definition of cognitive dissonance, because a lot of people, at least the kind of popular way of describing cognitive dissonance, isn't what cognitive dissonance actually is. Cognitive dissonance is the discomfort that you feel, specifically the discomfort that you feel when your actions do not align with your values and beliefs. I'm not going against my intuition when I say I should vote for Kamala Harris. That's exactly what my intuition is telling me to do. Of course, I am also using real evidence, statistics, knowledge of policy. I'm also using all of that, not solely intuition. I've already gone around this merry-go-round with Arcane, but it makes me really, really sad that so many people have this basic misunderstanding of how our government works and how our democracy works. When you vote for a president, you are also voting for their vice president. That's why it's Trump Vance. And that's why it's Harris Waltz. That's why it's just not Trump and Harris, okay? You're voting for both of them. The vice president is there. Their responsibility is to be a tiebreaker. And if the president can no longer serve, they will step into their place. I'll repeat one more time. When you are voting for a presidential candidate, you are also voting for their vice presidential candidate. You are voting for both of them. So she is democratically elected. I think it's really interesting that you'd call her a political puppet installed by corporations, seeing as Trump's number one value that he showed off as president was punishing his enemies and rewarding his friends who happened to be the corporate campaign donators and the people that he golfs with. All not just typically, all of them being extremely wealthy people, having gotten their money from a corporate route. Again, Trump reads off of teleprompters all the fucking time. I think that, I feel really mean saying this because it's directed at an individual, but genuinely, like, media literacy and literacy in general, like, come on, please. I all that this comment demonstrates to me is a lack of critical thinking skills. And like, I know that's really harsh, but that's what I got out of that.
I think what Ferris is trying to say, and again, if you don't have good literacy, you might not understand what they're trying to say. What they're trying to say is, you should educate yourself now and take somebody else a piece of that. I don't know.
I think that you have to be wary of where you're getting your information from. And if you're getting all of your information from social media, that's really unbalanced. And I get that impression very consistently when I speak to Arcane. I'm sorry. I don't want this to be like a very highly directed roast, but
I can't wait for you guys to debate.
Oh God, I don't even want to be honest.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that later. Sonic the Centipede says, I was really sad today, but it cheered me up to see this was uploaded. Thank you guys. Thank you so much, guys, for being the best podcast on the internet. MSGSA, man, such great social advocacy. Edit. Never mind, you didn't read my comment from the Israel episode. Wham.
Oh!
MSGSA, monstrous, sleazy, gay, stupid assholes.
Oh no! Wait, we didn't read their comment? What happened?
There was way too many comments.
Fuck. I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, we can't always read every single comment. My apologies.
Oh.
I talk to Sonic the Centipede all the time, though. They're fine. Chief3764 says, I was inspired to vote for Trump after the intro with pronouns, lol. I guess this is an example of us not being marketable across the aisle. Unfortunately, we can't have pronouns. We can't assert how we wish to be referred to. We're just winning votes for Trump by existing, unfortunately.
True. It's honestly
stuff.
all our fault.
Jordan Thompson 8268 says Big Daddy T 2024 and also says trying to connect Trump's statement to Crystal Knocked around 26 minutes into the video was a reach so ridiculous that I'm sure you yourself are aware of just how disingenuous it was. I'm certain we don't agree politically, and that's fine, but that little comparison is one of many examples that just feeds into my long vindicated belief that leftists are delusional and evil.
Wow. First of all, calling Trump Big Daddy is really gay of you.
Yeah.
And
they might be a gay Republican, who knows?
Second of all, what was the Night of Broken Glass? It was state-directed violence by the police and military officials and other people in the Nazi Party. And it was undirected violence outside of due process. And that's what he was calling for. He was calling for undirected violence by the police outside of due process. That's what a crystal knocked is.
Yep. Mao Zedong also did that, by the way. Just a fun fact. Not saying that I'm not saying that he was left winged. I was just adding that. The user with a bunch of money, not money. Why did I say money? User with a bunch of characters says, "Lol, I didn't mean to cause offense with my comment on the October 7th episode. When I called you sweet summer's children, I meant it literally and unironically. You're both sweethearts and I love you, but being that you're both still in middle school, you're both very young and have a lot to learn. Did you not listen to the intro of the episode where we literally said we are not middle schoolers? The title is just for fun. And ew, don't call us sweethearts and say you love us under the pretext that we're middle schoolers. That's creepy, dude."
Yeah, that's really creepy. And also that that's not what you meant. Come on.
Yeah. What the fuck? I'm sorry. I don't mean to be mean to anybody, but that was a big WTF.
Yeah.
That was a pretty big bruh moment. I'm not gonna lie. I believe that was all of the comments.
Wow.
Before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to Progressive Victory for offering me the opportunity to canvass. Thank you to Holden, the state lead in Wisconsin, for Progressive Victory for giving me a ride to and from Madison so I could canvass.
Wow.
Thank you so much for the ride, Holden, if you're listening. And thank you to Progressive Victory for the opportunity to canvass. It was great. Unfortunately, it's a little late to tell people to go canvass, but if you can tell other people to vote, here's a little secret. Technically, it's not always election fraud to vote more than one time. To vote more than one time, you just have to find somebody who's not voting and get them to vote for who you want them to vote for, and then you get another vote. It's not really. It's free. It's legal election fraud that we get to do. It's really cool. Sorry, people are gonna take that out of context. You get more votes. You get more than one vote because you have your one vote that you can put in yourself and the infinite possibility of votes from undecided voters that you can convince to vote. So use just if you really believe in voting, try to get other people to vote too. Get a friend, a family member. We need every vote that we can get, especially in a swing state like Wisconsin. It's really important. Mm-hmm. And also, don't just pay attention to the presidential race. Pay attention to everything on your ballot. Mm-hmm. Make sure you're on the right side of history there.
Mm-hmm. People forget that our presidents aren't just god kings with infinite power. They can't get stuff passed if they don't have a majority in the legislature.
I think the next episode that we record is going to be on election night.
Oh boy.
Are we gonna miss the recording because we have to go out and vote? What time are we voting?
I'm gonna vote early in the morning. I'm not sure if I want to record that day, to be honest. Also, I want to give a different definition of crystal knocked.
Okay.
What is a crystal knocked? A crystal knocked is state-sanctioned violence outside of due process. So, what did Trump call for? He called for police violence outside of due process. That just is what a crystal knocked is. There isn't much debate to be had about it.
True. What's the last thing that you want to tell our audience then before we know who the next president's going to be? This episode's going to come out tomorrow, by the way.
Please go out and vote. If you haven't made a plan, please do so. You can still vote early. But I think that the last day that you can vote early in Wisconsin is the 31st. And I could be wrong about that. Look it up right now. But otherwise, Tuesday, November 5th. If this episode is coming out tomorrow, that'll be in 6 days. This election is extremely, extremely important, okay? I understand that people are busy and they have things going on in their lives, but this is going to determine what your life looks like for it could be quite a while now. So it's really, really, really important.
Indeed. Felonious Ferris, where can our listeners find you?
I'm on YouTube. I'm on social media. I'm on Discord. Come talk to me on Discord.
Join our Discord server and come talk to me and Felonious Ferris.
Yeah.
Where, unless we get 1,000,000 trillion subscribers, we're always going to be willing to talk to anybody who joins the Discord server, whether you agree with us or not. The Discord server is a safe space for political diversity. We absolutely welcome people with differing opinions to join our server and have a friendly chat with us.
Yeah.
And with that out of the way, you can find me on YouTube at jELeeoo. I debated Ben Shapiro and Michael Knowles. Go check it out on my YouTube channel. And also I have a video about how dress codes can be transphobic and discriminately enforced against trans people. I have a video about why I'm done with Vosh. If you want to know anything about those things, go check out my YouTube channel at jELeeoo. And other than that, I'm also on Twitter, and I'm in the Discord server, which is linked in the description. So please, do it.
Do it. Do it.
Other than that, goodbye.
Bye-bye. Vote.
Vote.